Hey Tom, how you doing?
Hey, buddy, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Where did you grow up? What about your early days? And what was your first exposure to music?
Man, I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the armpit of America. My first exposure to music was, kind of my dad and my brothers, man. I had older half brothers, and my dad. I never met my dad or that side of my family till I was like 6, 7 years old, and then and they were super into music. My dad was a musician, and at the time it was like he was into like Tom Petty, and I remember my dad had like the Twisted Sister Under the Blade record, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this? And then like the Mentors, and again, those were kind of some of my first exposure to music, or like Tom Petty and Pink Floyd, and that kind of stuff through my dad, and that was like the way early '80s, and then the first kind of things I sort of discovered on my own and got into were like, Quiet Riot and Motley Crue and Kiss, and 80s Kiss first. I discovered Kiss in reverse. I discovered 80s Kiss first, and then retroactively discovered 70s Kiss. So kind of an interesting way to do it. But so that was sort of it, man. I started going to concerts. The first concert I went to was Quiet Riot and Black Sabbath, and then I saw Kiss on Lick It Up, and I went and saw David Lee Roth with Tesla opening and Triumph, and those were kind of the early shows I went to. And Iron Maiden, and Power Slave, So those were kind of my first exposures to music.
What age did you start in A&R, and could you describe the process of how you became an A&R guy?
I don't fucking know. 6? I don't know, man. I mean, look, when you're a big music fan and you're super immersed, I mean, since I was a little kid, I knew, I'm like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Originally, it was like, I'm going to be a musician and whatever, and then I kind of slowly started, moving over. It's funny, man, like most kids when they're 14 looking at their records aren't looking at the credits and seeing who the A&R guy was and figuring out what an A&R guy was, and it's funny because a lot of those guys, like, Thom Hazaert, who I grew up kind of idolizing because he was like the A&R guy for all my favorite bands, ended up being, kind of a friend and a mentor to me later on, so it's cool how those things sort of full circle around. But, I started, 14, 15, getting into the business. I started more as like a journalist and a music writer. And then I slowly just progressed into kind of from being in bands to managing bands to, a bunch of bands that would go on to be really big got on my radar really early. So I just kind of accidentally stumbled into A&R. I found some bands, like Papa Roach and Nonpoint and bands that would go on to get big. I found them real early on and kind of worked with them and kind of met some other guys in the business and, like Monty Connor and some guys who took me seriously really early on in my career. And I was just like, hey, check out this band. And that just slowly, organically turned into, I guess I do A&R, You don't start out as an A&R guy, you know what I mean? And like in 1981, like even the guys that were A&R guys, they started out as interns. They started out interning, you know what I mean? Like nobody just starts out as like, oh, you're an A&R guy, and I've never. I was an A&R scout for Jive for like 10 years, but I've never officially like, oh, you're an A&R guy. That's your job. You get paid a $200,000 salary to just sit in this office and listen to, like, it would have been fucking great. And that was sort of where I was working my way to. And then the whole bottom fell out of the music business. And then I scrambled and kind of went more to the management side and started my own labels. And that's where, it really blossomed into, but again, it's the same skill set. It's the same kind of thing. But I think everybody who ended up doing A&R, nobody just started out as an A&R guy. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of, again, most of them started out as interns or in the marketing department or doing something else, and then they slowly just, find or show their aptitude for that and just kind of slowly work their way into that role. You know what I mean? That's kind of, I think that's sort of generally the story for everybody that did it or does it, you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of just, I mean, ask most people, that's kind of the story. Like, oh, I was an intern, and then I did this, and then I, you know, like look at Peter Minch, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or Cliff Bernstein. You know, he was like an intern at a fucking label or a radio station or something, and he discovered Rush and was like, oh, you know, you know, on their first record. Like, again, it's always something like that, man. Like, you just kind of accidentally find some really great band or a couple really great, and again, the management thing is sort of a transition to that, because, you know, I worked with Kamira and a bunch of bands really early on and took them and shopped them and got them label deals, which is, you know, again, another function of A&R is just kind of the development. And so even when I was doing management, I was just kind of doing A&R on the other side from the other side of the table, you know?
What advice would you give to new bands in 2024?
Have a day job. You know, I mean, look, most people now that play in bands, like, have a job to fund being in a band, you know? I mean, It used to kind of be the dream was, oh, we're going to go work our asses off, and then we'll get signed to a major label. They'll give us a ton of money. We won't have to work anymore. But it's just not like that anymore. Like, the entire business has just changed. I mean, now, if you're doing music, you have to do it because it is just an all-consuming passion, and that's all you want to do. You know what I mean? There's no more, oh, I'm going to be in a band to get chicks and get rich and famous. Like, there's no more of that. You know what I mean? Like, when I was a kid, that's kind of what it was, man. We all looked at Poison and Motley Crue and Metallica, and we're like, holy shit, I want to be a rock star to get chicks and, you know, make just shitloads of money. And it's not even fun anymore. Like, there's really, I mean, it's fun in different ways, but I mean, again, it's got to be a different kind of passion, man. Like, you know, there's a lot of guys that were just kind of casual and fell into it back then, and now you got to work your ass off for 20 years to even get any kind of a break, you know what I mean? So, and you know, you've been doing this a long time, and you know, trying to create opportunities, and again, it's a grueling claw from the bottom, man, all the way to the middle.
Do you have any strange or funny A&R stories?
I worked with Ivan Moody on after he quit, or after he left Motorgrader, he did a band called Ghost Machine, and I signed them to my label, Corporate Punishment. And, you know, we were all set to put out the record. It was a great fucking record, man. It was a great record. One of my favorite things. I mean, look, a lot of that definitely seeped over into Five Finger Death Punch in the early days, you know. I mean, but it was kind of like it was kind of like a more industrial Five Finger Death Punch. Five Finger Death Punch with more almost like Depeche Mode kind of undertones, you know. It was like this real heavy, you know, metal / rock, but with like really good melodic, like, you know, Tears for Fears, Depeche Mode, like industrial synth pop, like undertones. I loved it, man. I actually got a song from that record on the Saw 3 soundtrack. One of the Saw movies. I think it was 3. I think it was Saw 3. There's been so many now, I can't even keep track of it. I'm pretty sure it was Saw 3. So, yeah, well, a funny thing that goes along with that, I remember me and Ivan we did a contest with Lionsgate, and we gave away a bunch of signed Saw 3 posters. I remember me and Ivan sitting up in the Rock and Roll Denny's in North Hollywood till like 4 o'clock in the morning, signing all these posters, and me and Ivan just for all the other guys in the band. But so if you have one of those, it's literally just signed by me and Ivan over and over and over again. But that wasn't even the funny story. That one just popped out of that. But so Motorgrader did a reunion show, and look, so as Ghost Machine was kind of going on, Ivan joined Five Finger Death Punch, and basically the day the record, the Ghost Machine record came out. Ivan quit Ghost Machine and joined Five Finger Death Punch. And so their first show was in Sedalia, Missouri at this festival, right? So this festival was a complete disaster. Like 50 people showed up. The promoter lost his ass. Like I remember Fear Factory. I'm trying to remember who else played. I remember Fear Factory was there because I remember laughing with Dino after the fact. But yeah, so the promoter like faked a heart attack at the end of the night to get taken out of there. It was one of those kind of things. But that was Five Finger Death Punch's first show, and basically Motogrator's last. So Motogrator left and ditched Ivan there, and Five Finger Death Punch had all left and like flown out. So Ivan got left with me. So and we flew into like St. Louis, and this thing was like 3 hours away from St. Louis, right? So in the middle of nowhere. So I had to take Ivan with me. And I remember in the car on the way back to St. Louis, he was playing me the Five Finger Death Punch stuff and talking about me signing them. And I literally remember what I told him. I said, dude, I'm done with this label shit. I'm winding the label down. I'm done. I quit. But this is amazing. And at the time, all they had was like Way of the Fist. And like they basically had a lot of the stuff from the first record, but they didn't have the Bleeding yet. But, yeah, I remember Way of the Fist was on there. And I remember that was the first thing I heard was that really heavy fucking, that beginning riff of Way of the Fist. And I'm like, holy shit, I still think it's fucking awesome. But, and I remember telling dude, like, I'm done with this shit, man. I'm quitting the label. I'm winding it down, which I did shortly thereafter. But you guys, this is amazing. You guys are going to find a huge label and be fucking huge. And, and I was absolutely right. And now they're like the biggest fucking band in the world, pretty much, next to Metallica. And they're out opening for Metallica. So that was kind of a fun. And then we went back that night, and for some reason we ended up at an adult establishment in St. Louis. And, yeah, I mean, it was funny. And then... yeah, I don't know. And then he got too cool to talk to me, and I never really. But that was like the last time and I've seen him a couple times since then. We've been cool, but yeah, that was the last hurrah with Ivan, man. Good, really cool. I mean, again, we sat up in Denny's till 5 a.m. forging the rest of his band's autographs. And it's funny, too, because it's like, it's funny because the autographs are probably worth more now because the rest of the guys, like, yeah, whatever. I mean, now you have Ivan's signature 3 times on your poster instead of the other guys. Well, I remember once somebody sent me, like, an instrumental Nirvana cover and said, hey, I recorded a instrumental cover of whatever the fuck it was, some Nirvana song, and they sent that to me like, could you check this out for your label? Like, I just the things that people send and they just don't get. And again, dude, like when I was fucking 13, I wrote a letter to the WWF asking if I could be a wrestler. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? Like people, and look, if you're 10 years old and you do it, it would be the cutest thing in the world. But if you're like 30 and you do that, it's a little different thing. You know what I mean? Like if a 10-year-old kid sent me like their Nirvana cover they recorded, I would hit them back and go, dude, this is fucking awesome. You know what I mean? If you're 30, like if you did that, James, like yeah, I probably wouldn't. I would be laughing at you. Just so you know.
Oh, okay.
And not anything against Nirvana. I mean, great, man. Hey, I love, look, Post Malone did that whole Nirvana set. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, send me a great Nirvana cover. I'll listen to it all day long.
How did you sign Symbolic, and how did you hear about them?
Symbolic, I honestly, dude, I don't even know. I honestly don't even know. I met Bobby somehow, and we became friends, and... yeah, I don't know, man. We just kind of became friends, and I dug them, and it just, again, was one of those things that sort of organically happened, you know what I mean? It's like they were kind of one of my pet bands, It wasn't like, honestly, dude, a lot of the bands I signed, generally they're big bands already, or it's a guy from a big band, and that's any of my labels. It's ever been that, my label now, I have Taproot and Simon Says and John Wysocki from Stained has a new band called Lydia's Castle, and again, but even that label, it was kind of like Doyle and Mark Slaughter and very, but I'd always still once in a while find a band that I really liked, that was kind of up and coming band that had their shit together and worked hard, and I really liked them, and I go, fuck it, let's do something, let's throw out a record, you know what I mean? So that was kind of how it was with Symbolic, man. They were just sort of my dudes. They were my friends. I really liked them. I really liked Bobby, and it just sort of one thing led to another, and I'm like, yeah, fuck it, let's distribute. And I believe it was a record that they'd already had done, and I just kind of distributed it, and we kind of did new cover art, and we sort of reissued it nationally, internationally through our distribution channels, and kind of repressed it. So, but yeah, man, I still really like that record, and I thought they were a really good band, and now those guys are doing some new stuff. That's a different project, but still really good. And Bobby keeps up with me and sends me some shit here and there, and kind of keeps me abreast of what they got going on. But yeah, dude, I really, again, it was just sort of a, hey man, they kind of approached me about it, like, would you ever consider, maybe helping us out with this, distributing it? And like, yeah, man, I like you guys, and it's really good. I mean, that's the thing. Even if it's a band that I really like, personally, it still has to be of a quality level. Like you gotta, no matter what, you gotta pass the smell test, and you gotta be somebody I like, and somebody I want to deal with, and somebody. But you also gotta have your shit together and have a finished record that's really fucking good. And people hit me up all the time asking me to. They want to pay me to put out their records or to work with them. And again, that's kind of one of my things I do on the side, which is I do a lot of consulting and kind of. But it's like, look, bands, if a band isn't good, my reputation is so important to me, man. Like, if there's something, if I don't feel like I can really bring something to the table for a band, like, if it was something that, like, again, I could be a rich man if I just took every band that came to me and said, with a shitty record, and said, hey, man, will you put out my record? I have more money than I know. You know what I mean? But that's just not my thing. I would, you know what I mean? Like, I just can't do that now. Like, look, I don't have to necessarily be in love with a band to give them some advice or talk to them or kind of help steer them down a path to, from point A to point C, you know what I mean? But for me to really get behind something and really be involved and put my name on it, it's got to be something that really, is at least at that minimum level of professional, sounds good, has, redeeming qualities, and can sort of hold its own with everything else that I've done,
What about recording the Def Leppard cover Wasted and the rest of that cover album that you did with David Ellefson?
It just kind of came about, like, me and David at the time were talking about, and it was kind of COVID, and we were, God, was it COVID? Yeah, it was COVID, and we were kind of like, hey, let's record a couple covers. Started out with like, hey, let's do a couple covers. Like, let's do an EP of covers. Let's do a record, and it turned into like a double CD of like 21 tracks. Yeah, Def Leppard, he's a big Def Leppard fan. I'm a big Def Leppard fan. Somehow we just landed on that song. And then, I hit up Frank Hannon from Tesla, and he's a big Def Leppard fan, too. So I hit up Frankie, and I was like, dude, you want to play on this? And he's like, fuck yeah. And I think who else is on? I think Jacob Bunton, actually, who's the singer on Mick Mars' new record that just came out. He sings on it, too. I think he sings some of the harmonies and backups on it. I'm trying to think who, I don't remember, was it, I don't remember, I can't, it's been so long, I'm so far removed from that project now, I don't even remember who all played on it, but yeah, it was Frank and Jacob Bunton, and I think Dave McLean played drums on it. Yeah, so that was kind of how that came about. We were just big Def Leppard, but the rest of the record, we did a lot. We did, Def Leppard. We did Judas Priest. We did, and some of it was, kind of his shit that he liked. Some of it was kind of I picked some of it. He picked some of it. We did Fight. But it was a lot of 70s, 80s stuff. And then we did like Rebel Yell, and we did, fight, Nailed to the Gun, and we did, it was just some interesting stuff on there, man. But yeah, I'm a huge Def Leppard fan, and especially that early. I mean, honestly, I didn't even want to try and sound like I'm super hip and say I only like On Through the Night. Like, no, dude, I loved every record through Hysteria, and I ended up actually doing some stuff with Phil Collin later. We recorded some stuff together for some movie soundtracks, and I worked with his band Man Rays and did some tour press for Def Leppard, and so I'm a huge fan of those guys, and got to do some stuff with them, and Phil was actually nice enough. My band Oedipus, who was on THC, Phil did a song with them on their record. So, the Def Leppard camp's always been really good to me, especially, Phil and his wife Helen and their family. They've been wonderful. So, again, it was just another. Well, and again, the cover, too, of the record was an homage to On Through the Night as well. So it was like the plot thickened even deeper, you know what I mean? It's like we have a wasted cover, and it's funny because some people are like, oh, you ripped off Def Leppard. It's like, no, it's clearly an homage parody of the Def Leppard, but what it was basically the On Through the Night, a semi-truck like that, but instead of the, Les Paul guitar on the back, it was one of David's kind of signature Jackson basses, that kind of had that real distinctive look to it, and, it was really cool, man. It was a really cool cover, actually, and it was a really, I thought the whole concept for the branding and the cover and all that stuff was kind of genius, you know what I mean? So... And I fully just pulled all that stuff out of my ass, you know what I mean? The idea for the cover, the whole, no cover concept, whatever, so. But, yeah, I'm super proud of that record and what we did with it and whatnot. And, yeah, it turned out really cool, man. Wasted is definitely one of my favorite songs off the record. I still listen to it and go, yeah, this just kicks ass, We also did Queen, which was not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So definitely not something that I was like, yeah, let's go do Queen. And it's funny, originally the Queen song on there, I wasn't even going to sing it, like Bumblefoot was on it too, and he's like kind of got that crazy, kind of the crazy 15-octave operatic voice. I'm like, dude, you just sing this. And then I'm like, fine, I'll try and do some backgrounds on it. And then I ended up like putting like 10-part harmonies on it, and I'm like, okay, I guess I can sing Queen. But yeah, it was actually me, Bumblefoot, and Doro Pesh who sang on that.
What's the story behind coming out of retirement, and what led to that?
I never really retired per se. Again, a lot of people misread. It was like, it's funny. I just make a frustrated fuck you post on Facebook. Next thing you know, it's on like Blabbermouth and Revolver and Loudwire and everywhere. And I'm like, it's cool, I guess. I guess I appreciate the respect that but so many people in the business like messaged me privately after that and said, man, I get it. I feel the same way, but I'm so trapped. This is all I have. And I'm like, dude, I'm the same way. I just had heart failure and gone through all this shit, and I don't really want to get into David and his stuff. It's not really something I talk about or really even care about for that matter. But it all obviously plays into it. That had all just gone down, and everything I had worked on for 5 years, I just got fucked out of, because of his actions. And so again, it was just, and it wasn't even just that. It was just, here's the thing. What I really said in the post was, I'm not going to work in this manner. I'm not going to work. I just realized life is too short, man. I just died. You know what I mean? I had heart failure. I was dead for 15 minutes before they revived me. And it was all stress from the shit I'd been doing for the 5-6 years before that. That's all it was. And it's just, I just realized I can't work like that. And I don't, man. When I came back, I don't work with people I don't like. I don't do things I don't want to do. I don't deal with people that cause me stress. I don't deal with anybody I don't like. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I don't do anything that does not bring me joy or that I don't want to do. And that was what I said in the retirement post. You know what I mean? Okay. But people, kind of didn't really, kind of took it at face value instead of really reading what I said. And it was, it's not sustainable to do stuff like this. I've done all this stuff for all these people that are totally, not grateful for it and don't really give a fuck, and I don't really make money for it, and I work my ass off doing all this shit, building all this stuff for free for somebody else to yank the rug out from under me, and working with people and being put in situations where, again, you spend your whole life in this business dealing with people you don't necessarily want to because you have to, because the business says you have to. And again, it's like, I think I'm a pretty nice guy. I think I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I think, anybody who's ever worked with me would most people would say that. And, you look at business, you have your little falling out moments, and then you come back around a couple years later and go, oh, yeah, dude. And, but it's just... Yeah, I mean, that was really the whole retirement thing. It wasn't necessarily, I'm going to stop doing this forever. I mean, it's just like, this is what I fucking do. And trust me, if I could have, I would have. If I could have walked into something else, but I don't even know, though, because, again, this is me. This has been me since I was 8 fucking years old. This is just what I do. This is who I am. You know what I mean? So, but I did. I started... it was music adjacent, but my buddy John had a skateboard company that did a lot of music decks, and I kind of kept talking to him, and then eventually I became a partner with him on that, and so I run volatile skateboards with him, and we do, Guar and Fishbone and Helmet, and we just did Steel Panther and Cavalera and Soulfly and Nonpoint, and I mean, we do a lot of, Descendants and Dropkick Murphys and a lot of punk bands and a lot of different stuff. We have a merch company and which is all music adjacent, but it's not technically music, which I kind of liked, and then, Taproot sort of dragged me back out of retirement, honestly. It was totally an accident. I approached Phil from Taproot, who had been a good friend of mine for years and years and years, and they'd been broken up for like 10 years, hadn't really done anything. I do you want to do some Taproot skateboards? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. That'd be cool. We ran it by Steve, and they're like, yeah, cool. So we did them, and then I'm like, why don't we do some merch, too? You guys haven't done any merch in like 10 years. And he's like, all right. So we did a Taproot merch store, and then he's like, they had this like B-sides collection that they'd put out sort of on their own, just independently. Like, dude, why don't you let me take that and reissue it properly and put it out in stores? And he was like, well, Steve has a whole new studio record that he just finished that he's planning to put out as a solo record, but I think he should just put it out as a Taproot record because it's too good. And look, Taproot, he was like, Taproot's his thing. Like, why the fuck shouldn't he? So basically, I'm like, oh, really? So then I had a conversation with Steve, and it came around to, well, let's do it as a Taproot record. And I got Steve to let me put it out, and we did. And then we weren't even going to do any shows, and I was like, all right, let's do an album release show at the Machine Shop. We put it on sale. It sold out in 20 minutes. Okay, let's add a second date. I was like, okay, these are selling really well. Let's add some more dates. So, the second show sold out in 20 minutes. We added a third date, and then, we added a couple more dates. And then I'm like, well, why don't you just give me like 8 weekends, and we'll just do a bunch of, an album release tour and do a couple markets. And we turned into them doing 25, 30 shows last year, and now this year we're doing Aftershock and Welcome to Rockville and Louder Than Life and Sick New World and all the big, DWP festivals and some other stuff. And so that was really what did it, man. I mean, an opportunity that great to work with a band I love that much, with guys that I like that much, you know what I mean? Like, that's really what, I was still in semi-retirement until that happened, and then Simon Says got back together, and I love those guys. I worked with them when they were on Hollywood Records, and, so, that was kind of a no-brainer, and, and then me and John Wysocki kind of reconnected, who I'd worked on the first couple Stained records for Flip and been really close with those guys, and so he's like, hey, dude, I'm doing this new band, and we reconnected. So again, it was really Taproot. It was really by accident. I was still kind of, it's not like I was opposed to music. I just, again, wasn't going to do anything I didn't want to do, and you know what I mean? That was it. It was more about, that, and, again, dude, everything, it's business is a very thankless job, man. I mean, everything I've ever done, it's always been like, sweat equity. Like it's always starting over and starting something new, man. It's not like I ever just walk into something when it's already built and they go, yeah, Tom, we want to hire you to come in and help run it and pay you a shitload of money. Like it's never been that. It's always like, hey, I have this great idea and I'm going to go and try and start it. Or, sometimes somebody else has an idea and I go and help them start it. And usually I help them start it, build it up forever. And then I'm the one who kind of just gets fucked at the end of the day and end up starting over, which I've done 30 times. But again, that's kind of same thing with managing bands. I tell you, that's what I love about the label. People ask, like, what's the difference between A&R and management? Well, I tell you what, A&R, signing bands, being the label, the band can't fucking fire you. If you're a manager, then there's bands I've worked with like Chimera. And I mean, again, there's bands where I've literally handed them their entire fucking career on a silver platter. And I don't feel it's necessarily appreciated, I mean, they always, it's always, the grass is always greener somewhere else. They always end up, talking shit about you for years. No, you did this and this and this and this. It's never like, yeah, that guy literally found us in a garage in Cleveland and handed us our whole career, So whatever. That's kind of the difference between A&R and management. Like, as a manager, the band can just fire you at any point for any reason, or, as an A&R guy, they're kind of fucking stuck with you. As the label, they're kind of stuck with you, which is kind of why labels, I think, get more of a bad rap, because, managers, they can just fire and go, fuck that guy. The label, like, they're stuck with it. If they decide they hate you, they're stuck with you. If you're an asshole, they're stuck with you, which is funny, which is why I think, again, labels and A&R guys kind of get sort of a bad rap, because it's like, even if you hate your A&R guy, even if you hate your fucking label, you signed a contract and you're stuck there for the duration of that contract. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a manager, you can fire a manager. If you have a management contract, doesn't mean you can't fire your manager. It just means you're going to have to pay them the commission for the duration of whatever that contract is, So that's kind of the difference,
What's your opinion on different genres of rock and metal?
I don't really have any, man. I like what I like. I think there's too much gatekeeping and too much stupid shit. I also think. Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I was right. Look, I was one of the biggest proponents of nu metal, and I helped a lot of those bands get big, and they literally were some of the biggest rock metal bands that have ever fucking existed. Again, they've. Linkin Park sold 30 million fucking records, man. They sold, next to Guns N' Roses and Metallica, they're right there. Papa Roach, a lot of those bands have sold a lot of records. And, again, they did a lot of stuff, and that can't be denied. But, there's still the metal purists who, fuck that. And it's like, honestly, there's certain genres of metal and stuff that I absolutely despise. I'm not going to talk about it, but there's shit that I just laugh and cringe, and it's stuff that like super hip, cool metal guys love, and I think it's the cheesiest, stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, you don't like down-tuned guitars, and I don't like keyboards and wizards. So we're again, but that doesn't mean I say that music shouldn't exist. That doesn't mean I'm like, that music is not valid. That's just what you like. So go like it over there. I don't need to hear about it, and I don't need to hear about what you think about, the band, I don't know. I've just always kind of been if you have nothing nice to say, shut the fuck up guy. You know what I mean? I don't gossip. I don't talk shit. And again, that's kind of how this business is. It's real gossipy, and I've just never really subscribed to that, man. Like, I've always been even if I hear something about, this person's this or this, like, generally I'll find out for myself, man. I'll form my own opinions, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of people who talk shit about me and say, Thom Hazaert did this and this and this to me. But you know what? There's always another side to that story, and it's usually, it's usually not that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's my side, your side, and the truth. That's the three sides there are to every story, So, yeah. But yeah, I kind of, whether it's, I just tend to keep, it's funny, for somebody who started out as a music reviewer, I really tend to keep my opinions to myself nowadays. unless they're positive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I'll scream it from the mountaintop, man. If I like something, if I like someone, if I support someone, you know, again, I you know, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything.
Well, you've been really cool with me through Facebook and everything, and reviewing some of my music, and I appreciate that.
And there's not a lot of those, man. I mean, again, there's not a lot of people like that, for the record. I don't really, you know, I mean, if I listen to everything everybody sent me, you know, and again, you got to find that balance between being a cool guy, not being a dick, and like saying yes to everything, man. I just, if I listened to everything everybody sent me or asked me to listen to, I would do nothing but listen to unsolicited demos for free all day long. Like, literally, that's it, you know? So it's like, there's got to be like a relationship there or some level of interest or whatever for me to really, like, you know, have that kind of a relationship with somebody, you know? If you're in a band, you know, just keep doing it and keep plugging away and, you know, keep your shit together. Branding, music, make sure everything's quality, make sure your shit is good, and before you send it to anybody. You know, the other thing that like blows my mind, dude, is all these dudes that like spend like 2 hours on, like, they just live stream, like stream of consciousness themselves just like playing guitar and think they're like, here's a new riff I wrote, and then they just sit like going like what I would do home in my bedroom, like, embarrassingly, like they just sit and do it on the internet for the world to see for like an hour at a. It's just so weird, man. It's like you need to hold some shit back from the world. Not everything is stream of consciousness. Not everyone needs to know every single thing about everything. Every thought that comes into your head, like everybody I've ever met in passing, everybody I've ever met at a club, everybody I went to high school with, people I went to elementary school with, like everybody I've ever encountered in my life does not need to know every single thing I think, every single thing I eat. Like, come on, man, keep some mystery. You know, I don't get it. Like, hey, you're at a friend's restaurant, or it's fucking amazing, or you want to support it, fucking by all means, man, post it. You know what I mean? And I will support it. But again, just some people just take it so far. You know. I mean, again, but that's one of these phenomena that, to me, is just like dudes that are like very kind of beginner to intermediate guitarists who just like sit live streaming on Facebook and playing like Metallica riffs for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like the shit I did with my friends when we were 15, but they live stream it on Facebook. I don't get it.
Well, I definitely agree with you on that. Maybe make a demo of it, develop the song a little more, record it properly, and then present it in a proper way.
Like, exactly, that's it. I mean, even like people like, oh, this is the new riff for the new song I wrote last night. And it's like just like something I would have written when I was 13 fucking years old and just learning how to play guitar. Like, even if it's the greatest riff in the world, like, don't present it that way. Like, so, okay, great. Go in the studio, record it as a fucking song, and then release it. You know what I mean? Or, I don't know. I mean, what am I? Maybe I'm just, old yelling, get off my lawn. But to me, it just seems really, counterintuitive, counterproductive, and just kind of weird, man. I don't know.
Well, all right. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Same here.
If you need anything else, you can always hit me up. I'm always around.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. You too.